Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. The Democrats ascended on Miami this week for the first round of presidential debates, and at times, it seemed a bit chaotic.
Senator Harris, I'm so sorry. We will let all of you speak. Senator Harris. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak. Senator Harris.
You can't afford to wait for evolution on these issues.
Hey, guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes?
Amid all the noise, some candidates beat expectations while others stumbled. This morning, we're going to look at some of the issues that came out of the debate and the role Florida played. In a little while, we will talk to former Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum, who is leading an effort to turn Florida blue. But first, we will lead off our discussion with Republican Al Cárdenas, the former chairman of the American Conservative Union, and Marc Caputo, a reporter for Politico, covering the 2020 presidential campaign. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming in.
Our pleasure.
Let me start, Al. Let's start with your basic impression of the debates of the two nights, and we'll pick it up from there.
Wow, two totally different nights, the first and the second night. Second night was an all-out rumble. The first night was more of a peace feast in terms of how it proceeded. I thought it provided the audience with incredible clarity as to who are the real contenders and who are not. The first debate gave us a lot of clarity as to, where people are now situated. It's no longer an everybody chasing Joe Biden race. It's now a race between, I think, 6 candidates, and it'll be much more interesting.
Mark, initial impressions?
Yeah, the first one was pretty meh, and the second one was anything but. I think these are TV shows, and we need to remember that. And every TV show that's successful has a good twist. And the fact that Kamala Harris, who for a long time had always been expected to break out but never did, just came out and just dominated across the board, has been an irresistible storyline on TV, on social media, and in mainstream mainstream media, newspapers and the like. And I think you're going to really start to see her move upward in the polls. How far, we don't know, but a lot of her success came at Joe Biden's expense.
Well, I want to play an extended clip. This is about 1 minute, 20 seconds long of, I think, the critical, crucial moment. And what I think this moment that I'm about to play is when the 2020 race actually begins. Let's play that Biden-Harris sound.
To hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well,
I
there
did
was
not
a
oppose
failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
So that's where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I have supported the ERA.
How powerful was that moment, you think, as it played out on TV?
Well, very, very powerful and very smart. Joe Biden entered that debate with 45% support from the African-American community. Kamala Harris numbers are going to increase primarily by the fold of a significant number of that community, just like it happened with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. So I think it's a twofer. It made Joe Biden more vulnerable. It made this a wide-open race. And also it gave Kamala Harris a chance at significantly increasing her numbers.
It really wasn't a good look for Joe Biden on a couple levels. One, you talk about it being a TV show. The split screen of her pouring out her heart and him just staring away, just into camera and not even acknowledging her until the very end. And then the anger that came across in his voice. He came into this debate, I think, wanting to rise above all the other candidates and just talk about Donald Trump. She pulled him back down and made him appear human. Yes, and also one of the foundational assumptions of his candidacy is that he's the electable guy. And there are a lot of Democrats who saw this debate last night. They saw someone whose time might have been past, someone who was not sharp in his responses, someone who did not take control, and someone who, therefore, if he becomes the nominee for the Democrats, a lot of Democrats are saying, might just get his behind handed to him by Donald Trump. And what you're therefore going to see is that electability argument, if that narrative continues, just start to erode. And Al talked about black support for Biden, and there's relatively low black support for Kamala Harris. That's in part because she hasn't been seen as a potential winner. After last night, definitely looks like a winner. We were talking before we started the show. One of the things I think is natural to do, and Mark made a reference to this, was as you're watching the candidates, imagining them standing up against Donald Trump on a stage at some point. I think certain candidates over the two nights showed they weren't ready for that. Like Beto O'Rourke, for all the hoopla around Beto O'Rourke, if Julian Castro can dice and slice him up, you just imagine what Donald Trump would do. Kamala Harris, I had people this morning come to me and say they want to see that debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see Kamala Harris one-on-one with Elizabeth Warren, too. I mean, Elizabeth Warren got a big break on the first night. It also gave Julian Castro a chance to shine. I think Julian Castro and Mayor Pete have emerged as two likely vice presidential candidates just because of what each offers. And so that was interesting to watch. But I think Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren have been given the baton of what Bernie Sanders represented in 2016.
I was about to say, the one name we haven't mentioned at all is Bernie Sanders, who came across to me, and Mark, I want to bring you in on this. If you close your eyes and had played sound from the 2016 campaign, it would have sounded exactly like the 2020 race. I think, he certainly can take credit for moving the party, but he's not keeping up with the other candidates.
Well, so far not. In 2016, Bernie Sanders was the not Hillary Clinton candidate, as well as a visionary in his party, pushing it and pulling it in a more progressive direction. Now, Democrats have a wider array of choices, and you're seeing them start to exercise those choices and really look for that candidate who fits the progressive mood the best. And the reality is progressives really want a woman or a person of color. And at least in Mayor Pete's case, someone who is, let's say, not a more traditional candidate. Now, the fact that he's gay is actually a plus in the Democratic primary. But when you look at all of those not Joe Biden candidates, there's a real wealth of choices now. It's not just Bernie Sanders.
You talked about Julian Castro before. I want to play a little bit of sound from Julian Castro from night one. We've been focusing a lot on night two. Let's play a little bit of sound from night one. And I want to, this will also lead us into a discussion on Homestead. Suddenly the Homestead Detention Center took front and center as well in this debate. Let's play the Julian Castro Beto O'Rourke exchange. I think that was an interesting one.
Let's be very clear. The reason that they're separating these little children from their families is that they're using Section 1325 of that act, which criminalizes coming across the border, to incarcerate the parents and then separate them. Some of us on this stage have called to end that section, to terminate it. Some, like Congressman O'Rourke, have not. And I want to challenge all of the candidates to do that. I just think it's a mistake, Beto. I'm talking about millions of folks. A lot of folks that are coming are not seeking asylum. A lot of them are undocumented immigrants, right? And you said recently that the reason you didn't want to repeal Section 1325 was because you were concerned about human trafficking and drug trafficking. But let me tell you what, Section 18, Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Title 21, and Title 22 already cover human trafficking. I think that you should do your homework on this issue. If you did your homework on this issue, you would know that we should repeal this.
Again, this discussion, the backdrop of the migrant children who have been separated from families and Homestead, as soon as that took place, my phone started, getting text messages from Trump folks, from Trump campaign folks as well, saying, oh, there the Democrats go, open borders, open borders. This is an issue that the Republicans, that the president wants to run on, tarring the Democrats with it. But is this good politics for Democrats as well?
Well, you know, I separate politics and human rights. Human rights and human right violations are too powerful to politicize. When you forcibly separate children from their parents, when you treat them in inhumane conditions, I don't really care what your politics are. That's inhumane, it's un-American, and you have to stop it. We've got to stop separating children from their parents. We've got to make sure that they're taken care of humanely until the legal process is completed. And if you're not doing that, America, we're not the country I thought I knew. Canada has 1/10 of our population, yet they took in more refugees than we did last year. We're not the America that we were even during Reagan years or Bush years. As a Republican, I'm ashamed of the treatment of these children and these families.
Nearly, I think every presidential candidate on the Democratic side, except one, went to Homestead. That one candidate who had scheduling conflicts was Joe Biden. Telling?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm stammering a little. I don't want to sound ageist, but I wonder how much this is the result of the campaign not wanting to stress out a candidate in Joe Biden who is a bit aged. Not just old, but he seems a bit infirm. And the travel schedule he's had, relatively speaking, especially when you look at the other ones, has been kind of light. And, you know, it is brutal out there in the South Florida heat outside of Homestead if you happen to go out to those press conferences. I think the broader issue in immigration and the broader problem that Democrats are going to face is that not only will they be tarred with an open borders accusation, which is essentially demonstrably false, but a lot of them have called for free health insurance or subsidized health insurance for illegal immigrants or undocumented migrants. That's an issue that's not going to play well with a lot of people. We have many homeless people in the United States and a lot of veterans who don't have health care. And Donald Trump, the campaign, the Republicans, are going to probably do a very effective job messaging around the fact that they want your tax money to go to people who should not be here, in their words. And I'm not sure that's going to be very helpful for Democrats.
All right, I can't let this segment go without talking about the one blunder, the man who will certainly not be president, but who certainly made a splash in South Florida. This, of course, being New York Mayor de Blasio. and let me play what he said. This was at a strike at Miami International Airport for Yulin workers. This is something we've been covering on this show. De Blasio, a number of other candidates showed up, and this is what Bill de Blasio had to say.
Hasta la victoria siempre. Brothers and sisters, we will be with you every step of the way. Bring home a victory for all working people. God bless you all.
Now, that's, for anyone who doesn't know, let's just bring you up on your history, or maybe Al, you want to. Let me tee this up for Al. Al, what exactly was that reference that he was what he was saying?
Well, obviously, that's a saying that Che Guevara had during the Cuban Castro Revolution, and he's saying, well, I didn't realize that. Well, come on, man. I mean, you have been sympathizing with this movement in Latin America since the early 20s. I mean, Mark brought up yesterday, he uncovered the guy in Nicaragua where he was there helping the Sandinistas in the middle of a Cold War when the United States was fighting the communist intrusion in our hemisphere. And he sympathized with them. He raised funds for them. He spent time with them. And it's never been a secret that he's been one of those guys that, for whatever reason, sympathizes with that movement in this hemisphere. So he's well attuned to the wording. He's well attuned to the history. But to say that in the city of Miami, I mean, come on.
In translation for those gringos out there, ever on to victory. It was the final closing line of a letter that Che Guevara wrote to Fidel Castro before going to Bolivia. It's a documentary about Che. It's a song about Che. Mark, does this just play right into Republican hands who want to, again, paint all Democrats as being socialists?
Oh, totally. I mean, that's what the Miami Young Republicans had sent out a press release ahead of time saying that the Democrats need to denounce socialism. And then, like 2 days later, here is the mayor of New York City acting like a Marxist. I mean, he was just missing the beret. And then de Blasio's explanation, this is a common phrase in Spanish. Who would have known where it came from? No one really knows where si se puede came from. Like, well, actually, you do know where si se puede came from. You do know that, it's Cesar Chavez. And you also know where hasta la victoria siempre comes from. And it comes from Che Guevara. I mean, that's who popularized it. Is that even a common Spanish phrase outside?
No, not at all.
It's not like, oh, it's a beautiful morning, or yes, we can. Like, this is this is kind of a trademark phrase of the Cuban Revolution. For de Blasio to do it in Miami, I mean, it was pretty gutsy to see him do it. I don't know.
Until he immediately then got grief for it and backed down from it.
Yeah, I think the best line was from Annette Taddeo, the state senator from Miami, a little south of here, who had tweeted, "Delete your campaign," is what she said. So,
yeah. All right, so I think we're gonna end it there. I want to thank both of you for coming in. I think that the debates, I think this was, as you said early on, I think this was a good clarifying moment. I mean, we're still 200 plus days away from the Iowa caucus. It's early. You can't count anybody out, but I do think we're starting to winnow out the field. And I think that by the time the next debates take place at the end of July, some of these candidates, I don't think it's going to be 20 candidates on a stage by then. But we'll see.
I hope not. I mean, clarity means having people who are really qualified to be there. So I hope that the Democrat Party figures out a better
Although let's
way.
keep Marianne Williamson around just for fun. Because love is what will beat Donald Trump, as she says. All right, thank you both. Up next, we continue the conversation with former Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum.